second elementary model of general equilibrium theory has another time only two subjects, but in this case we have an household and a firm, and there are only two goods, labor time and a consumption good. Right. Let us consider this particular case. Let us consider first of all our consumer. Consumer is also a worker, which has a quantity of time. For example, a certain time in a week or in a month, and so on. And divides this time between the working time, labor, and leisure. Is it clear? Leisure is employed for many reasons, but also in order to consume goods. To consume goods it is necessary some time, and so leisure is employed also to this scope. Suppose that our consumer has a utility function which appear both the consumption, level of consumption of a given good and leisure. And suppose that this function increases both with x and h. So the condition of consumer, which is also a worker, is the following. It has a set of different curves which represent his preference relation between the consumption good and leisure. The firm employs a certain quantity of labor in order to obtain as a product the consumption good. Suppose that there is a function of this type, Q equal to F of L. If I employ this quantity L of labor, I obtain this quantity Q of product. In other terms, the firm buys labor time from the consumer and sells to the consumer the consumption good, which it obtained by means of production and operations of goods. The profit of a firm, if P is the price of the consumption good, will be simply P times F of L minus W, the wage of the workers, times L, the quantity of labor which is employed by the firm. Is it clear? As a traditional model with only one factor, the most simplest model of production. The firm chooses L given P and W, because we are in a context of perfect competition and subject are price takers, chooses L in order to maximize this profit. And we obtain the optimal quantity Q of P and W, this is the supply curve of a product, the optimal quantity of labor hired, which is a function of P and W, and a profit, which we denote by pi of P and W. All these are optimal quantities and are functions of the price system, right? P and F. Well, let us represent the situation of a firm by means of a graphic. While remembering what Salvador told you in the second part of the course, here there is L, here there is Q. This is the production set of a firm. You remember the usual convention. The employed quantity of factors are denoted by negative numbers, while the quantity of product is denoted by positive quantity. All the points in this set represent possible production processes, but only those on this boundary correspond to the functional relation between Q and L. Remember that the production function associates with every combination of factors the maximum quantity of product. So this is the graphic of a production function. Let us trace also the isoprofit curve, the set of the points in which this profit is constant, the profit P of times Q minus W times L is equal to a constant, you obtain clearly a straight line negatively sloped. The optimal point is the point which belongs to the highest isoprofit curve, as usual. As Salvador surely explained to you in the second part of the course. Is it clear? Note that this intersection with the vertical axis represents the profit phi of P and W expressed in terms of produced goods, and in terms the profit on the price of the produced good. The quantity of Q, which can be buyed by means of the profit of the firm. Is it clear? This is the usual representation of the optimal choice of a firm in the context of a production set representation. Let us suppose, for sake of simplicity, that all this profit is obtained by the labor, the household, because the household is the only owner of the firm. So his total income is given by W times L, the labor income, plus the profit which is obtained by the firm. All the profit is given as dividends, for example, to the consumer, which is the only proprietor of the firm. Is it clear? And this is our income or wealth, if we use the same term as before. It does represent the situation of a consumer in a separate graphic, which is H, this is Q. This is the level of Q, which he could buy by means of the profit of a firm. This is T, the total available time. The budget constraint is this. Substantially, this is the initial endowment. Initial endowment is given by some quantity of time t, some quantity of good, consumption good, which can be bought by means of a profit of a firm. In this budget constraint, our consumer maximizes his preferences or utility and obtain this optimal point. This optimal point. Is it clear? In order to have a representation of equilibrium in this context, it is sufficient to pose this graphic on this graphic which represents the situation of a firm. And you obtain the following graph. This is the point chosen by the firm. The firm wants to employ this quantity of labor and to obtain this quantity of good. If you superimpose this graphic on this, you obtain exactly this budget line. Suppose that the vertical axis of a consumer is this. Note that this set is nothing but this set. Consumer maximizes his preferences or utility, and we obtain this point. Another time, note that the point chosen by our two subjects do not coincide. In this case, there is no equilibrium. Why? Let us consider more attentively the situation. Let us on this point. This is the total available time. Well, this is the optimal quantity of leisure. So, by this equality, this segment represents the supply of labor from the consumer, by the consumer. And you obtain exactly this segment. While the demand of labor by the firm is equal to this segment, this larger segment. What is the meaning of this result? It's simple. It's on the market, labor market, there is an excess of demand of labor. The quantity of labor which the firm wants to employ is greater than the quantity of labor which is supplied by the consumer. Excess of demand of labor. For the good is the contrary, because the optimal quantity of good of the consumer can be represented here by this point. It is inferior to the optimal quantity of good produced by the firm. So, we have an excess of supply of a consumption good. Note the same result as before. If on one market, in this case, the labor market, there is an excess of demand of labor, on the other market, the consumption good market, there is an excess of supply. This is a consequence, of course, of a well-known variance law, which we prove afterwards. So it is no wonder that the same results returns also in this moment. Prices must change so that these 2 points coincide. And you have general economic equilibrium in this case. So let us redraw the graphic with other prices of course in order to obtain an equilibrium. This is the optimal point for the firm, this quantity of labor, this quantity of produced goods. And suppose that the difference curve of the consumer is tangent exactly in this point. In this case, you have equilibrium, because the optimal quantity of labor which is demanded by the firm is equal to the optimal quantity of labor which is supplied by the consumer. And the same thing happens for the produced good, the consumption good. So there is equilibrium on every market. At that time, in order to obtain equilibrium graphically, the optimal point of our two subjects must coincide. The same result as before. Let us have another interruption.